I'm Bonnie. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter, where we take the mystery out of the tarot and help you bring this ancient practice into everyday life. In this podcast, we'll talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So grab your tarot deck, get comfortable, and start your journey to tarot with Bonnie and Peter. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. I'm Bonnie, and today is very exciting for Peter and I because it's the official kickoff of season 2. Woohoo!
I know. 2 seasons.
2 seasons. We launched over a year ago. So this is a big deal for me and Peter.
Yeah, who would have thought, right? Who would have thought? That's, 40, what do we do? 45, 46 episodes in season 1?
I think it's more than that.
Yeah.
We should have checked before we hit record.
Hit record? It's somewhere in that neighborhood. It's more than 45, so 46, 47. I think we're in that neighborhood. So, and just so people know, I was doing a bit of research, and it apparently more than 90% of podcasts die after episode 3. So, big thank you to everybody who has kind of joined us or stuck with us and slowly increased our listenership. And we love doing this, and we love the fact that we actually get to do it for another season.
I know. When we found out we were coming up on our 1 year, we're like, oh, it kind of went by fast, and it's been such a joy, and it's so much fun that I get to be able to do this with you, Peter. I think a lot of maybe podcasts don't continue because maybe they don't have somebody that, they're podcasting with. And I always tell people how fortunate I am that I get to do this with my tarot partner and my friend. And it's been so much fun. That's all I can say about it. It's been fun.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's so funny, right? Because the things you said, tarot partner, friend, I mean, that wasn't like when we started out this podcast, we had really kind of just met each other at a couple of, tarot and teas. And it's developed into a really nice and strong tarot partnership and a friendship as well. We've gone out with our respective partners, and for those who don't know, when we get onto we open up the chat and we kind of get ready, we're not usually talking. At some point, it's like, oh, we better talk about what we're going to do in this episode. We're usually catching up and finding out, okay, so what has happened over the last week? And it really has, I think we connect over the tarot, but we really have a friendship really has blossomed out of that. So, I thank you for that too. And then and I've said this before, I have learned tons from you from doing the podcast. I think it's actually changed my tarot practice. As a matter of fact, I know it has, because I heard myself channeling my inner Bonnie this morning with a client consult. I was like, wait a minute, I'm sounding an awful lot like Bonnie.
I love it, Peter. Well, and to me, that fills my heart. Thank you for saying that. I feel the same about you. When we were meeting for coffee and you were like, oh, we should collaborate on something, I was like, so honored that you, with all of your experience and all of your knowledge with the tarot, would actually even consider doing something like that with, a quote unquote newbie like me. But I've learned so much from you, Peter, and it really is an honor to be able to do this with you. So thank you.
I don't think anybody listening would refer to you as a tarot newbie. So, and neither would I, but, thank you. It's the joy and the respect is mutual. And, we should probably move on from this, mutual self, or, this mutual self-love, kind of.
Well, I do have to say, Peter, I'm going to say one thing. It's funny because I was online and I was Googling us, or like something like, because, if you guys don't know, we have a new website. It's tarotwithbonnieandpeter.com. So I was Googling that and I noticed some of the searches were Bonnie and Peter love or something like that. So I think people might be like, are they like married, or what's going on between those two? So for the record, Peter and I are both married, but not to each other.
That's right. Yes. And our spouses actually get along quite well. They share some similar interests too. We've got together on, I think just the one occasion, just once, the four of us.
Yeah.
So yes.
And Peter's wife is lovely. So
yeah. And same, Bonnie's husband is lovely. Although I do on occasion refer to you as my tarot spouse. So,
Yes. I would agree with that. we all have work husbands and wives.
That's
So
right.
you're kind of like my work husband. So
Exactly. All right. So
okay. So
what are we
today,
gonna, yeah, I was gonna say, what are we
yeah,
gonna do
today
today?
we're gonna interview each other. So
Mhm.
we thought it would be kind of fun. You know, when we have guests on, we like to ask our guest questions, but we thought, oh, this would be a great opportunity for Peter and I to ask each other some questions related to tarot, related to the podcast, and kind of as a refresher. If you're new to our podcast, you might get to know us a little bit more. So that's what we're gonna do today. So hold on, because
That's
we
right.
hope that this should be really fun. And we have not practiced or thought about these questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
We
Other
know what
than
we're going to
basically
ask each
deciding,
other.
that's right. Other than deciding the
Yeah.
questions we were gonna ask, it's
Yeah. So this is fly by the seat of our pants answering.
we're
Do you?
trusting. Did you see the trust that we're putting in each other now? So,
Yes,
all
yes,
right. There
exactly.
we go.
Okay. So Peter, I'm going to ask you
All
the
right.
first question.
All right.
What episode or moment from season one still lingers in your mind?
You know what? Like it is, that's a hard question because I'm okay. So I'm gonna talk about one episode in particular, but then I'm gonna talk about one sort of aspect of the podcast. So we'll call that a moment. So I think the one moment that lingers in my mind is probably the first time we decided that we were going to invite a guest onto the podcast. So it was Janine Worthington. I think it was around episode 11, 12, might even been a little later than that. Because at first we had a lot of talk about tarot, and I think since then we it might be from that episode moving forward, about half of our episodes are, we can't call them interviews. They really are conversations with
Mhm.
some pretty important and influential, but also just wonderful and lovely tarot practitioners. And that to me, I think if I was going to say, that's one thing that has lingered in season one, it might be I'll say, tarot slash personal connections that we have made with the guests that we had brought on. And I think we had talked about having guests, but when we started the podcast back in May of 2024, we had not lined up a single guest. And, we had really just talked about the concept of guests. And now, having interviews with other tarot people, I think, is one of the foundations of this podcast that, people can expect that coming in season two. We're going to certainly be inviting more people on, taking recommendations. If you've got them, please, by all means, put them in the comments. But I do think that that's the one thing that for me lingers from season one. The one episode, though, is, and it's probably, it's probably, I don't want to say if it's one of our least popular ones, but it was it was an earlier episode where you almost asked me questions about the links between tarot and astrology, and I loved it because I was sort of able to talk about something I'm exceptionally passionate about, and I think knowledgeable about in the tarot, and then bring in something that I'm also passionate about but maybe less knowledgeable blah 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 about in astrology, but that those two practices really do blend themselves for me personally. So it was a way to almost bring part of myself to the podcast. So that's probably the episode that lingers for me the most. And then the concept of episodes are really, the connections. Like, there are still guests now that I had never met before that, I'll interact with, online, like a comment here, and, and the responses, and it's, hey, Peter, how's it going? Nice to hear from, like, there's a genuine connection that came from this podcast. So yeah, those are the two things that linger in my mind. Yeah. So, Bonnie, what about you? So I'll ask you the same question. Which episode or moment from season one still lingers in your mind?
So many. Like it wouldn't, yeah, there's There's a lot of moments that have been so impactful. I think I'll answer sort of in the same way that you did. Like overall, this has been such a wonderful experience of getting to meet people who are very influential in the tarot community. And they come on our podcast and they're so lovely and genuine. And we share these beautiful moments. And really, it's a coming together of a tool that has been such an important part of our own development in our own lives, and watching, and hearing about people's origin stories, how they started with the tarot. And it's just like really this amazing community of people. So it's been such an honor to really get to meet our guests, have them on, and even you, Peter, you're like a guest for me, right? So getting to be able to do this with you every week is also such an honor. So that's been a huge eye opener for me. Not eye opener, but like, wow, this is actually possible. Like two people coming together to share the love of tarot, and then having other people come on our podcast to share their wisdom with us is so wonderful. And if I were to pick a moment, it would be when Mary Greer was on, and we pulled the Three of
Three of
Cups,
Cups.
and she had tears in her eyes, and to me, because we were kind of talking about the same thing, like sort of in this world where things aren't always so, happy, right? Like we go through hard times, and, with the political climate and everything that's going on around the world. And when we came together, the three of us, to have a conversation about tarot, and we pulled the Three of Cups, it really was this, like, you could feel that energy and feel that camaraderie, and, everybody lifting each other up based on this practice that's really so powerful. So that, I was like, oh, wow, Mary Greer was on, and we pulled the Three of Cups, and, she had tears in her eyes. That was a pretty magical moment. But so many of our guests, like really all having all our guests on, and all those special moments that we shared with everybody. So
Yeah, it was hard because when you asked the question, I definitely wanted to, I tried to think of specific guests, but then I could highlight a reason why each and every guest
yes,
was my favorite guest. So,
exactly.
it was hard. Like when you mentioned that, I knew exactly where you're going with Mary Greer, and then I think of the moon card that we drew when Yasmin Bolin was here. I
Exactly.
think when we had Susie Chang, and I think every one of our cards had a Venus-based connection to it. Those are just they are magical. There's no other word for it. They're magical moments.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that was like the culmination of all of these experiences that we're having with such incredible guests. So,
Yeah. Well, and that we'll keep going. All right, I get to ask the next question then. Is that
okay.
okay? So,
Yes.
Bonnie, what would you tell your season one self now, since you are now a seasoned, podcast host? What are you telling newbie rookie season one Bonnie?
Okay, so if I could go back and talk to season one Bonnie, I would just like, honestly, Peter, I have to say this has been such a great experience doing this podcast. And maybe, yeah, I'm sure I was pretty nervous and thinking, like, well, who am I to do a podcast? But it was just like something that I knew I really wanted to do. And having you as a partner made that so easy for me. So if I were to go back, I would be like, this is going to be awesome, and keep going. Like, have that mindset of like, you don't know where this is going to take you, but as long as you're doing what you love and you're putting good work out into the world, uh, just keep going. So I would just encourage her, because she was excited back then. She's still excited now. And like, maybe I would tell her, you're going to have some amazing guests on that you're not going to be able to imagine that they're actually going to say yes and come onto your podcast. So maybe a little bit of that, but definitely encouraging her to keep going. And it's going to be fun.
Yeah. And we have had some it is a lot of fun, but yeah, when you think about some of the guests we've had, like, I know I often accuse this as kind of, fanboying and fangirling, and there's we've had some big, powerful, you know, tarot and tarot affiliated names. So, we've had some great conversations with, so.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you tell Peter? Peter from season one?
So you know what? It would probably be less tarot and more friendship. I would probably
Mm,
tell Peter, like be ready to develop a good and strong friendship with your co-host. I don't think I would have expected. I knew we kind of shared a real passion for the tarot. And I was pretty confident that we were going to do, a good and growing job with the podcast. But I think the depth of friendship that we've developed, I think, has surprised me a little bit. Not, I
mm.
think, do you know what I mean? Like we, I ran into you I went to the Mystic Fair, and I know when I introduced you, it's like I talk about you being my co-host, but this is my co-host and friend Bonnie. Do you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I think I would have I tell my season one self to be, prepared for for finding and growing a
Mm.
new friendship, developing a new friendship.
Oh, Peter, you're gonna make me
Yeah.
cry.
Well,
And Peter was famous.
you'd be in good company, like,
Oh, thank you.
right?
When Peter came to the market, people were like, "Is your name Peter?" So he was pretty famous at the market. I have to say, people recognize Peter when when he goes out.
Well, Peter is sometimes, look, people recognize Peter when he goes out because he's, been the principal of half a dozen schools in the neighborhood. So there was a time where going to the grocery store was an ordeal because every child in the grocery store would be pointing and, saying, that's my principal, and you'd be having conversations. So
So you're used to the fame, I guess.
yes, yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly where I was going. Right, I'm used to the fame.
Yes. Awesome. Okay, Peter.
It's fun.
How has your tarot practice changed you as a person?
Okay. How has it changed me as a person? I don't know if it has changed me as a person. I think, like, are you talking okay, so my tarot practice over the course of this podcast, over season one, it hasn't changed me as a person, but my practice has probably changed through the influence of how you approach the tarot, and then sometimes how we get little nuggets of wisdom from our guests, where, they will say something and I'd be like, oh, that's actually, quite significant. And then, it kind of becomes, at least maybe even just for a time being, but it influences how I approach the tarot. From a broader perspective, though, because I don't know if I can remember a time where the tarot wasn't part of who I am. My, like, my tarot practice has changed over time, and has certainly, I think, at some moments made me a more reflective person.
Mm.
Has caused me to be more, to pause a little bit. I think even the practice of tarot itself, I find to be an exceptionally grounding practice. So I think by doing, by engaging in tarot practice, I have felt kind of more grounded. Like I said, it slows you down because you really do have to, you can't flip a few cards and then go, oh, okay, that's good, I'm out. It really does.
Yep.
You've got to take a moment to think about what's being said, how it's going to impact your day or your week or a few days or whatever it is you're looking at, or the question that you're asking. So I think it's helped me in that regard as a person. It's probably helped me develop, as a person. I think change is a strong word, though, because like I said, my pre-tarot self would really be a teenager, because I've been,
Mm.
messing with the cards in one way or another since I'm 17 years of age. And I'm not 17 years of age now. 17 years of age, that's what, 15, 20 years ago now, at least.
Yeah. It's just
Just
yesterday.
yesterday. Sometimes, don't you get those moments, though, where somebody says, oh yeah, back in 1990, and you think, oh, yeah, 1990, that's 15 years ago. And somebody's like, yeah, no, 35 years ago. So
Well,
yes,
even
back
when
when
I
I was,
think back to being in university, I'm like, oh yeah, that was just 10 years ago. And then I'm like, oh my God, that was a long time
Mhm.
ago. So
Yep.
yes,
Somebody
time
reminded
flies.
me that I graduated high school 40 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Anyway, so that's, for me, that's where I would go with tarot. I don't know if it's changed me as a person, but it definitely, both my practice over the last season has changed, through the influence of people I've connected with, but my tarot practice has probably shaped me as a person as opposed to changed me as a person. So I don't know. What about you? How has your tarot practice changed you as a person?
Wow. Okay. First of all, thank you for that lovely comment you made in your answer. And I want to reciprocate that because I think we both learn so much from each
Yeah.
other. And hearing your perspectives too with the cards really makes me reflect on how I see those cards, and it always brings another nuance into my relationship with that card. So I want to thank you for that as well. Tarot really has helped me to, yeah, change, I guess, would be a good word for that. This is no secret. I was petrified of the tarot. Not
Mm.
petrified, but I, I wasn't really crazy about the cards in the system. I thought it was like really negative, and I wasn't so much wanting to understand the tarot, but it found me and I gave it a chance. And when it showed up, it did help me to change. So what the tarot taught me, and I talk about this when I do workshops, is that it just kept showing me patterns about myself that I was now ready to face. And I think that's why it took so long to come into my life, because had I been using the tarot at a younger age, maybe I wasn't really prepared at that point for what was coming. But it just kept showing me that I was hiding,
Mm.
like I was hiding things that I was doing because I was fearful of how other people would judge me. And the thing that I feared, which was the tarot, was actually the catalyst to help me face those fears and to be like, it's okay to be who I am. It's okay to do the things that I want to do. And as I do that, it inspires other people to be able to do that too. So the tarot helped me to stop hiding and to show up. And yeah, it did change my life in that sense that I was like, the Seven of Swords is gonna keep haunting me if I don't do something about it, right? So and I love to teach the tarot in that perspective, to be like, what are these patterns that I keep seeing? And I have a decision. I can either keep living my life the same way I've always been living it, or I get to choose now and do something different. So it's been a huge blessing for me. And something that's been, it's not the easiest thing. Like I would never, even a year ago, maybe a year ago, because we came out with the podcast, I never told people I did tarot. And now
The secret's out now.
the secret's out. Yeah. And I'm, some people aren't crazy about that, but that's okay. That's for them. And this is for me. So yeah, it's really helped me not give a what what other
Yeah.
people think about me, which is still hard, but I'm on that journey.
Oh, I love that. That's yeah. It's amazing how, and we can kind of phrase it in a way that says, well, the tarot hasn't really shaped me as a person. It's done blah blah. But the truth is, it does actually. It does. It is a valuable tool for kind of self discovery, and when you discover, what you've talked about as well, is it really does. It really does change you and shape you as a person, for sure.
Yeah, it definitely did that for me. So okay, that was heavy. On to
We're getting a little lighter now.
something a little lighter. Okay. Peter, if you could have dinner with any one of the majors, someone, one of the archetypes in the major arcana, who would it be and why?
I've been, you know what? Since we threw these questions together about 3 minutes before we hit record, I've been thinking about this one, maybe to the distraction of. And I think this is one of those questions where, depending on when you get asked, I think you would have a different response. And I think there would have been a long time where I would have answered the magician to that card, just because there's something about the magician archetype that draws me. But I think today I would answer differently. I think I would actually want to sit down with the moon card. And the reason I'd want to do that is I think I'd want to talk about, I want to talk to the card about my own journey trying to understand and connect with a card. And then I would ask her what, I always think, some of the best learning experiences we can have is to sit down with the things that we fear the most. Now, I don't fear the moon card, but I've made it very clear that, of all the cards that I work with, that is the one that really does cause me to pause and be like, okay, what are you about really?
Mm.
And what better way to ask that question than to ask it directly to the card over dinner, So, I can just imagine, somebody comes, because I mean, if I'm having dinner with the moon, we're going out, right? We're not, so we're not sitting we're going out. I'm wining and dining the moon because I think she deserves that.
Mhm.
Maybe I went on a big trip with my son, and one of the things I wanted to do, I think I'd mentioned, was to do a Michelin star experience. So we did that in Paris.
Mm.
So maybe that's what I would do at the moon, because this was a 3.5 hour dinner, so it gives you an opportunity to kind of linger and talk. And I'd want to ask questions like, so what are you about? What is it? What am I so afraid of? What is it that causes me, that to that element, that discomfort, of that lack of understanding, and see what the moon has to say. So, I'd want to confront a little bit of my discomfort and fear with the moon card in the neutral space of a dinner table. That's, and I
I
think,
love
look,
that.
I think it would be, I think it'd be a great conversation, like who better, to kind of nurture food with than, the card linked to Pisces, and then the celestial body of the moon with all the all the nurturing stuff and home-based stuff that goes with it. So maybe with the moon I should do a home-based home cooked meal, but no, I think the moon as goddess deserves to be taken out for dinner. So
Mhm.
there we go. That's that's the answer I give today. Ask me the question tomorrow and it could be different.
It could be different.
Could
Yeah.
be different.
It would be kind of fun to go out with all of them, right?
Totally. Totally.
We could
Totally.
learn from all of them.
We could. And I know somebody had, because just to bring our listeners in a little bit, a couple of episodes ago, when I think we had asked, would somebody like us to do an episode on each of the major cards, and somebody had jumped in and said yes, please. And I suspect that you're at least going to see some of that come season 2. That we'll definitely take a deeper look into the majors, because that's the only real aspect of the tarot we haven't done yet. Would be really interesting, for us to bookmark this question and sort of approach what dinner with, and then fill in the blank, would be like. So if we sat down around the dinner table with the Tower card, what would that dinner look like? Versus if we
Mm.
sat down around the dinner table with Strength, what would that look like? So maybe that's something that when we do those episodes, we could explore a little bit. That makes us, makes it a little bit more playful, maybe a
Mhm.
little bit more approachable. I don't know. I don't know what you think about that, but or people listening, what you think about that idea if we, approach one of the major arcana as a dinner guest, as at least as part of the question. So, anyways, you're right.
Yeah.
They would all be interesting, but go. You haven't told us yet.
I haven't told you. Yeah. Okay. So same, right? Like we came up with this question and I'm like, oh, who would I, yeah, the high priestess. I'd love to have dinner with the high priestess. But who would I like really? So I'm going to say the devil.
Of course you are.
Yeah. I'm going to have dinner with the devil.
Okay.
And because I want to that card is so powerful because it has so much in it, right? It's like, what am I hiding? So I'd be like, and the devil doesn't care what other people think about them. They go out and do what they want. So it's almost like this, I don't know if you've watched Lucifer on
No, I figured that's where, because I was going to say, and the devil is pretty sexy as well.
Like him.
But I think it's going to be,
I forget what his name is. It's Ellis, I think, is his last name. I can't remember. Tom Ellis, maybe, the actor from Lucifer. If the devil looks like him, I'm going to dinner with
you and many of our listeners as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, but in honesty, it's like I'm at this point in my life where I am tired of hiding. I'm tired of excavating all this stuff that's lurking in the shadows, and I want to live my life now and do it on my terms and not care what other people think or try to get everybody's buy-in for everything that I want to do. And I think having a dinner with him or her, whatever, the devil archetype would be like, how can I look at this stuff more and deal with it in a way that, I can sort of get rid of it once and for all. Although I believe life is a healing journey. But yeah, and he, they have some of that like fun aspects.
Totally.
I think that dinner might be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, as much as it would be like a lot of learning and sort of seeing some of those things that are, sort of hidden, because we hide our fears, but we hide our desires
Correct.
too. And how can I look at that? And so I'd like their perspective on that.
That would be, can I be a fly on the wall in that dinner? And
Yes.
anybody else listening? Because that's that. I like that, the devil. And I was imagining what's the devil card? There's a devil card where they're kind of laid out. They're pretty, they're pretty sexy. Like, they've got that smoldering. One of the decks has
The light seers.
light seer. There you go. The smoldering devil.
The smoldering devil. Yeah.
That was,
Yeah, like I don't want to go with the scary devil. I want to go with
yeah.
the one that's like, like like what tempts me?
Mhm.
What patterns do I keep repeating that maybe aren't the healthiest for me? How can, I show up more as myself and not feel bound to other people's opinions or even my own belief? It's that false truth. Like,
Totally.
if I like had dinner and be like, what are my false truths? Like help me see this stuff so that I can let it go.
Yeah. My wife, Kelly, is right. And she actually, her latest podcast, she talked about Rebecca Yaros's series, Fourth Wing. It has a name to it, but one of the
Okay.
main characters' name is Zayden. And if there are any people who know this series, then they'll know exactly who I'm talking about, because smoldering and sexy, mysterious. And he's a shadow yielder. So that means he kind of controls the shadows around him.
Mm.
And to me, I think, somebody had talked about him being the ultimate Scorpio, and I'm okay with that, but he would be the devil card in the major arcana. I mean, who else but, someone who can who literally controls the shadows around them, you know, who other than the devil card. So, and again, probably a character that many people would like to share at least the dinner table with, and I'll kind of, I'll
Maybe
leave
appetizers. I don't know,
maybe
but we'll see how it goes.
appetizers in and leave the table. Is that what it is?
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
See,
I
you
like
never
your
know.
perspective, Peter.
Never know what you're gonna get here. Tarot with Bonnie and
Nope.
Peter.
Nope.
All right. Next question. I now
Yes.
I've lost track of who
You want
asked
me to
what.
ask you? I'll
Sure.
ask you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. How do you hope our listeners feel after tuning in to our podcast?
Um. Wow. I that's a good question, actually. I hope they feel more connected to the tarot. I hope they feel less intimidated by the tarot. I think that was one of the things that we had talked about from the get-go, is we wanted to make the tarot much more approachable and understandable for people. And I think we used, in some ways, both of our experiences, that there is a fear factor with the tarot. I think one of the things I've loved about teaching tarot is letting people know that it's not this big and scary thing.
Mm.
So I think I'd want them walking away with the understanding that the tarot is a tool as opposed to a belief system, that the tarot is approachable and accessible to anyone. Yes, it's powerful, and yes, it has an element of mystery to it, but it actually at its heart is a deck of cards. So that also means that it has an element of play to it. I think
Mm.
one of the things I really enjoyed about because Bonnie suggested this episode around asking each other questions, is it's playful. We're not there's depth, I guess, to our conversations, but pretending that you're having dinner with a major arcana tarot card has an element of play and fantasy to it. And I want people to walk away. I want our listeners to walk away with the idea that, that the tarot can be many, many things, and that it doesn't have to just be a tool about predictive, for example. Like, I'm not sure that we have ever really spent a ton of time talking about the tarot as a predictive tool. I think you and I talk about it more as a tool for guidance, for insight, for self-reflection, for sometimes self-talk, but also for play, for imagination, for creativity, for intuition. Like it does all of those things. So yeah, I think I would want our listeners to walk away with a different connection to the cards than perhaps one that they came in with. And what I hope is that through our conversations, whether it's conversations you and I or conversations with our guests, that they get pieces of that in different ways depending on our topic, in different ways depending on who we're talking to. Does that make sense at all? I sometimes
Yeah,
feel
I
like
agree with you.
yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. All right. What about you? What do you hope our listeners feel after tuning into our podcast?
Well, I hope they feel excited, right? Like, I mean, we get so excited when we talk about the tarot, and it's like if there's that one thing that you could think of doing, right? You could, talk about it all day long and you wouldn't get tired of it. For me, that's really the tarot. I'm like, oh, I could talk about this all day long. So I hope they feel excited when they listen to an episode. And exactly like what you said, if they're curious, maybe this gives them a new perspective of how we can work with the cards. I think a lot of times, and I think a lot of people fear the tarot because they don't understand it, or they think you have to be psychic to read the tarot, or you're predicting someone's going to die, right? Like if the death card comes, like there's sort of all these myths that make it this tool that can seem very not relatable or not approachable. And we've seen so much in our own personal development and how we work with other people and the insights they get from working with the cards, that it is such a tool for like introspection, looking at things from a different way, right? And being like, oh yeah, I never thought of that. So if they're curious and they walk away and being like, oh, I didn't think I could use it for that, or I like that interpretation of the card, or it could be like, no, I have my own interpretation, I don't really resonate with that, and that's okay, right? We all have our own ways of developing our language with the tarot. So I hope they feel excited and want to listen more.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I even love when, I think it's happened for both of us from time to time where people have listened to the podcast and they've been like, the other thing they get from it is they like how either you or I work with the podcast, and then they reach out
Mhm.
either to take our course or to get a consultation or through mentorship.
Yeah.
From I guess a practical perspective for us too, it's like, keep that in mind. If, we want people to connect to us as personas and to our podcast and to the tarot, but, if you feel that connection even more, then by all means, reach out to one of us and explore the kind of services that we have to offer. Cause I think we really are our genuine selves here. Like, I think that's another thing is that, we're like just two people who use and enjoy the tarot. And I think elements of ourselves kind of come out into the podcast, like in a very authentic, and I mean, there are pieces of me who I am, that's just, you can kind of see who I am, in the hour every week here on the podcast. Cause that's just, it's who I am, and getting to know you as well. It's the same. Like when we talk not in the podcast, you're very much the same person as the person I'm talking to at the other end of the screen in the podcast. So
What you see is what you
what
get,
you get,
people.
right? Right. That's it. What you see is what you get. That's right. There's no look, should we get a little hashtag at the bottom? No filter. No
No
filter.
filter. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we have one more question.
Yep.
All right. So
Okay.
you want me to, let me ask it then.
Oh, okay.
What are you excited to explore in season 2 of Tarot with Bonnie and Peter?
Yeah, I'm just excited. Well, I'm excited to explore having more guests on our show. I would love not some, all of the guests that we've had. If they want to come back, we welcome them back with open arms. And yeah, meet more other tarot enthusiasts, people who are putting their work out there with the tarot. Yeah, just I would love to meet more people, have more conversations, and continue this. I think that tarot is a journey that never ends, and we're always going to keep learning. And there's never going to be a point where it's going to be like, oh, I know everything I need to know about the tarot. I'm good now. So I'm excited to keep exploring and keep learning and keep growing and broadening my awareness with the cards, especially from you, Peter. You have such knowledge in terms of the astrological side of the cards. That's something that I am definitely not strong in. And so I'm excited to learn more about that and sort of deepen my practice from that perspective. But yeah, I'm just I'm just happy to be here, and I'm excited to grow with this podcast and to grow with all of the guests that we've had on and new guests that are to come. So how about you, Peter? What are you excited to explore for season 2?
Yeah, I mean, probably same. I think for me, to continue learning from you because I love your approach to the tarot. I love what I call your intention based practice, but you put a real practical, you know, aspect. I think sometimes I get kind of stuck in the knowledge and stuck in my head, and you do something that I think someone like Yasmin Boland does exceptionally well. And I think that might be why I know we had our episode. She wanted to read, like she wanted you to read her card because I think you give that a real succinct and practical um, message from the card. So, message from the card. You communicate the message of the card in a way that is succinct and understandable. It's to the point, and you approach that. So I'm looking forward to more of that because then, like I said, that impacts my own practice. Like you, I'm also one. I certainly hope that every one of our guests, and we give them a standing invitation, but we will also reach out. I probably have at least half a dozen names of people that I definitely, want to reach out to. A couple that we already have and that we know are coming in future episodes, and more that we will definitely reach out to and hope that they will graciously accept our invitation. But I also want to continue to do things like this. I'm hoping that season 2 brings an opportunity to kind of play in dialogue with the tarot, because I think what it does is, kind of related to the last question, is it just makes it a little bit less fearful and more approachable. In the end, sure, it's a powerful tool, but it's just 78 pieces of cardboard. And there's nothing wrong with, talking about it, having a little bit of fun, taking the tarot and putting it into other experiences. Like we've talked about, tarot cards as characters and, court cards as characters in as fictional characters or as real people. We just talked about taking a couple of major arcana cards to dinner. They're great ways to learn about the tarot, but I also think they're great ways to just approach the tarot from a non-threatening way. So, more of that. So again, if people are listening, you've got ideas as to how we can go about doing that, please, by all means, either email us at what's our email address? Did we change it?
Hello at tarotwithbonnieandpeter.com.
Right. So at hello at tarotwithbonnieandpeter.com, or in whatever platform you're watching. Comments are always open. I think they're open everywhere. Yeah, throw that in there, because we'd love to hear from you about some of your ideas. We've had some listeners share them already, and we've either gotten to those ideas or those ideas are coming. But we'll certainly take more of your feedback.
Yay.
I know. And
Okay,
yeah.
Peter. So should we continue on with our daily draw, or our daily draw, our weekly draw?
Yep, totally. All right. Oops. I just want to make sure they're right side up.
Okay.
Always check that. Check the bottom. I forget where I got that, but the bottom card, like, I mean, I don't work with reversals, so my cards are always upright. And if one happens to be upside down, then it's upside down. But somebody taught me, you check the bottom of the deck to see, and if that bottom card is upright, then the deck is considered upright. So I was just checking. Gaian Tarot today.
You're using the Gaian Tarot.
Yeah,
Okay.
look, I am. It was nearby. I'm doing some work, which I'll actually talk about afterwards, and I'm using the Gaian Tarot for it. So, all right. Oh, there we go. Okay. I think I drew a card. I have yet to draw in all 40 odd episodes. I don't think I've seen this one before. How about you?
Okay, are you gonna? Yeah,
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes.
you go
Maybe
ahead. You go
when
ahead.
after saying that, I should say I got the Guardian of Fire.
Is that so? Who is that in the
Queen of
court?
Wands. Right? Isn't that interesting that as we talk about, I talk about the podcast and moving forward, I draw the card that my co-host often says, if I'm going to be a tarot card, that's the card that I'm going to be. So, Guardian, and so I'll talk a little bit like the Guardian of Fire. I actually really like the terminology of that. So, Joanna Powell Colbert changes both. So she used the elements as the suits, so earth, air, fire, and water, and then uses um, child, explorer, guardian, and elder as the ranks in each of the cards. Guardian being the equivalent of the queen. But I think the word itself, like, the guardian of the fire, the keeper of the fire, the keeper of the hearth, really talks about the two energies that Queen of Wands blends, right? The Queen of Wands rules in the realm of fire. So, her world is a world of creativity. It is a world of passion. It is a world of intuition. It's a world of the spark that gets things done. But as the queen being in that element of water, that concept of being the guardian, of being, almost compassionate and empathetic, being the container that kind of holds fire in, I think is such a good blend. And I think it's one of the reasons why the Queen of Wands, or in this case, the Guardian of Fire, is to me, I think, one of the most appealing cards and powerful cards in the deck. I always think, it's interesting when you say that's, the card that you want to be, because I often think, as a matter of fact, in the This Might Hurt in Isabella Rotman's version, I often see my wife personified in that card because it's the creator's card. So it's the card of the person who's sitting down, who is the content creator. They're writing, they have, I think there's sunflower on one desk. The black cat is around somewhere, in the card as well. And they are the card that is kind of taking that creative fire and making something of it, because they're almost a perfect blend between heart and heat. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know I'm playing with words there, but like, you've got, you have both, that passion. Like when this comes up for a reading, when I'm working with a client, I always say, this really is that perfect blend of, I want to connect, whether it's romantically or, through like relationship, but, I also want to keep that fire burning in myself. Like I don't want to lose the passion of kind of who I am. And even better, if I can blend both of those, if I can, kind of bring both passion and connection together, then I really can personify that Guardian of Fire, that Queen of Wands. So I don't know. I don't know if I went way out there. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyways, and I do, like, again, right. And I love the fact too, that, when Joanna does this, she really does shift away she really is quite fluid with the gender descriptions that she would have. So in this case, Guardian of Fire, looks like somebody who identifies as male, but, she really does kind of move away from that traditional gender attachment that we would have with king, queen, knight, and page as well. So what about you? What do you, I mean, you could probably do an episode on this card. But.
Yes, I could. Thank you. Yes, it is no secret that my desire is to be the Queen of Wands. So for me, I always have little sayings that I attach to cards, and the Queen of Wands for me is like, show up unapologetically as yourself, because she is that queen who goes, she enters a room and she has presence in the room, not out of like this ego, like from this ego perspective, but like, this is me, I'm shining my light, and I give you permission to do the same. And I think we were talking about that either before we started recording or on the podcast, but it's like, she is caring, she's compassionate, and she's a rock star. She's amazing. Like, women are like, oh my God, I want to be the Queen of Wands. And she's like, you are the Queen of Wands. Like, we are all the Queen of Wands. So it is that energy of having passion, following what you love to do, having that creative spirit, and showing up as you, exactly where you are. So I love her energy. yeah. And it's funny. That's really fitting for what we're doing here today because we're showing up as Queen of Wands,
Mhm.
right? In that energy to to talk about what we love to do
Right.
and to be like, if you want to listen, we'd love to have you here,
Yeah.
but it's okay if you
You
don't,
know.
right? Like we're and you said this earlier, like we're the same on this podcast as we
So,
are off the
mhm.
podcast. And that's the type of energy that the Queen of Wands is. It's like permission to be who you are in every respect and be okay with that because that's what the world wants to see, right? We want to see the real authentic you.
Mhm.
And she's the epitome of that. So
Yeah, I love that analogy because you're right, and we really do both come into this space, kind of honoring the Queen of Wands. Like we are who we are, and we really do. We not disrespectfully, but we say take it or leave it. Like we're not nobody. We didn't look after 10 episodes and go, wow, we only have X number of people watching. All right, we're out of here. We're doing this because we have that fire burning and we're passionate about it. But we are also we have a love for we have that both Queen, we have that water and that fire. We have a love for the tarot and we have a passion for the tarot, and they combine nicely in this card.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah. All right.
Yay.
Yay. Did you draw the Queen
Okay.
of Did you draw the Queen of Wands as well? Because
No.
that'd be funny.
But I also drew a card that is very um uh, aligned with what we've been talking about today. And I love this. And I'll explain that in a minute. I'm using the Tarot of Mystical Moments. Um, and I pulled the Ace of
Ace of
Cups.
Cups. Mm.
So for me, and it's funny, you were talking about intentions earlier, Peter. The Ace of Cups for me is that intention that comes from your heart. And I teach a style of meditation called Yoga Nidra. And during the meditation, you guide people through to listen to your heart. What is your heart's desire and create an intention based on that. So Ace of Cups for me represents following your heart's true desire, like having intention that comes from the heart. And I think for us, that's this podcast. We had this intention of doing something
Mhm.
that we are so emotionally connected to, something that we absolutely love, but it's also really passionate and creative. So we have that fire energy too. But it's like we had the intention to do something that we both really wanted to share and put out there. And we followed our heart
Mhm.
to do that. So the Ace of Cups really is about choosing something from the heart. And if you think about aces as like a blessing or an opportunity, it's like you're being offered this opportunity to do something that is really connected to you, right? What like intuitively, right? Because cups is all that intuitive energy as well. So what is it that you're being offered right
Mhm.
now? And this is your opportunity to do that, to follow that, have intention, and follow your heart, really. So,
Interesting.
Ace of Cups.
The first card, because there was we did we not draw a wand for the very first was the energy around
Oh,
the
was it the
podcast.
Ace of
It
Wands?
was I thought it was the Page of Wands, but
Uh,
I think it was a wand. I'm almost positive it was a wand. And I think of that, to me, I think of that Ace of Cups as that transition, because we started out this podcast. So you talk about relating to, kind of season two and where we're at. We started this podcast out as something that grew from passion.
mhm,
But the truth is, it has developed into something that is more like connection. That,
mhm,
it is, I think it for us, it's both our relationship that we bring with the tarot, but it is a growing relationship that we bring with each other that we
mhm.
also bring to the podcast as well. It's why, people are always surprised going, you mean you're not like together? And it's like, no, we are married, but to other people. So I
Yes.
think there's that element of, and having watched other people, kind of grow into that sort of podcast space, it is, and I think that season two brings more of that. And
Mhm,
you talked about, kind of the offering. I often think of the aces as the source of. So I
mhm,
think, it's almost like the source has shifted from that one of passion to that one of connection.
mhm,
That Ace of Cups represents everything that sits inside the emotion of the element of water, which is emotion, is connection, is compassion, is empathy. There's a much softer, there's a much softer connection again to it, but also that piece of intuition. Sometimes I think the fact that we sort of know what direction the other person is going in without really knowing. Like, do you know what I mean? Like there is that element of of connection that is built and will probably continue to grow with season 2. So, that's I see Ace of Cups sort of as a source of the things that are yet to come in the realm of cups, because really the journey of the ace of or of the cups doesn't really start with the 2. There's no movement in an ace of cups. That the narrative really does start kind of goes sort of 2 to 10. So
Mhm.
no.
And I love that you're talking about the relationship side of that. And we can view tarot as a
Of course.
relationship, right? Quite often we think relationships always have to be with other people, but you have a relationship with your personal fitness practice, right? You have a
Mhm.
relationship with your meditation practice. You have a relationship with your business. So
That's right.
that is still part of that cups energy. And we
Mhm.
have relationships with our tarot
Mhm.
practice and how we bring that together and how that evolves. So I love that perspective, Peter. Thank you for sharing that because it's so relevant.
Yeah. Well, and I often think about the connections that people have with, like, astrologically with Venus, where they think,
Mm,
also the sign of, or the planet of connection, but they think, oh, Venus is it's the goddess of love. And it's like, well, it is, but you can love the work that you do, and you can love the people you work with, and you can love your
mhm,
friends, and you can love your neighbors. And,
mhm,
it's not always about romantic love. It is about, selflessly giving of you into a particular space. That
mhm.
that really is what that I think that source of cups, whether it's an offering, whatever it happens to be, the general source of the element itself is. So thank you for that.
Thank
What a
you.
great card to draw. And I noticed as well, was that butterflies coming out of the cup?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's like a tea. She's holding this beautiful, like ornate teacup,
Yeah.
and then its butterflies are just flying out of the cup.
Uh,
It's so pretty.
Beautiful. All right. Well, that's episode 1, season 2 done. For those looking to connect, since, let's get into that Ace of Cups space with Bonnie.
Yes.
Where can they do that, and how, what might they find there?
Well, I think the easiest place for people to connect with us would be our website, which is
Mhm.
tarotwithbonnieandpeter.com. You can find out a little bit more about me from that website. And then if you're curious, you can click on the link and then go to my personal website and see what I have going on. I have a Meet the High Priestess online class coming up. I believe it's on May the 28th. All the information is on my website. But if you want to do a little work with the High Priestess, we're going to, take a deep dive into her energy, pull some cards, do some journaling, and then I will guide you through meditation. So you get to actually meet the High Priestess and see, maybe she'll, you can have dinner with the High Priestess.
Right.
Through meditation, maybe not dinner, but you'll get to meet her anyways, her or him. And yeah, but I definitely recommend that you check out our new website. All of our podcasts are posted on the website, and yeah, that would be a great resource. So, Peter, how can people find you?
Well, same. I'm going to do the same thing. Tarot with bonnieandpeter.com. And of course, you can find out a little bit more about us. You can head to my website and look at, some of the things that I have, coming up or on offer. The one thing I'll highlight is a brand new webinar series that I have starting in June. It's called Cards of the Zodiac, and it is a monthly look. So every sign, so just before the sun moves into its upcoming zodiac sign, this 90-minute webinar will look at all the cards associated with particular signs. So I start with Cancer, and I kind of explain why on my website. You're welcome to go and take a look. And then we look at every card, major card, minor arcana card. We look at it from a decantic perspective. And we kind of go deep into all the cards in that particular sign, finish off with a practical either aspect or exercise that really lets you connect both astrology and the tarot, and then an opportunity for people to ask questions. So this is one of those things that, if you're a student of astrology or a student of tarot and you're curious about how you can successfully blend those two things, then I would highly, highly urge you to go and check out what will be a 12 webinar series, one for every sign, but that starts with the cards of the zodiac Cancer in June. I think it's June 7th or June 8th is the first webinar. So if that's of interest, go and check it out at my website, which which you can find by going to tarotwithbonnieandpeter.com.
Awesome. Wow. Okay. So this is episode 1, season 2. Again, we want to thank you for being here. We do this podcast because we love to share the wisdom of the tarot with you. So please, if you like this podcast, leave us a nice review. You can subscribe and also share with other people who you think might find this podcast helpful. So we want to thank you for joining us this week and in our past episodes and the future episodes coming up. We love to hear from you, and we will see you next time on Tarot with Bonnie and Peter.